The thugs cornered her in the alley, and she knew no one would help. Then 6 motorcycles roared to life. The veteran bikers stepped between her and danger, and they weren't backing down. The grease from the fryer clung to Jenna's hair like a second skin. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and glanced at the clock above the register. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until midnight, and she still had 2 tables nursing cold coffee and a mountain of dishes waiting in the back. Table 4 needs a refill, Charlie, the night cook, called through the kitchen window. His voice carried the exhaustion they both felt. Jenna grabbed the coffee pot and forced a smile she didn't feel. The couple at table 4 barely looked up as she poured. No tip tonight, she could already tell. That made 3 shifts in a row. Tyler's school supplies weren't going to buy themselves, and his birthday was coming up in 2 weeks. 9 years old. He wanted a bike. A real one, not another yard sale find with wobbly wheels. She caught her reflection in the diner window. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back in a messy bun. When had she started looking so tired? 28 wasn't supposed to feel like 40. The bell above the door chimed. Jenna turned, coffee pot still in hand. 6 men walked in wearing leather vests covered in patches. Bikers. Her stomach tightened. The Rusty Spoon Diner wasn't exactly a biker hangout, stuck as it was on Route 9 between nowhere and nothing. But lately more riders had been stopping by. They were always polite, always quiet. Still, something about them made her nervous. "Sit anywhere you like," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. The man in front nodded. He had gray streaks in his dark beard and eyes that seemed to notice everything. The group settled into the large corner booth, their leather creaking as they Saturday. Jenna approached with menus. "Coffee. 6 cups. Black," the bearded man said. "And whatever pie you've got left. Apple and cherry. Bring both. Whole pies if you can spare them." Jenna raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. A sale was a sale. Coming right up. She returned to the kitchen, relieved. They seemed harmless enough. Charlie was already boxing up the pies when she grabbed the coffee mugs. "Road sentinels," Charlie muttered, nodding toward the bikers through the window. "Veteran club. My brother rode with them before he moved to Texas. Good guys." "If you say so," Jenna replied, but she felt a little of the tension leave her shoulders. The next hour passed in a blur of refills and small talk. The bikers were easy customers, joking with each other in low voices and leaving their table cleaner than most. By 12:30 a.m., the diner had emptied except for them. Charlie started the closing routine while Jenna cleared the last of the dishes. "I'm taking the trash out," she called to Charlie. "Make it quick. I want to lock up by 1 inch. Jenna grabbed 3 bulging trash bags and shouldered her way through the back door into the alley. The night air hit her face, cool and sharp. She welcomed it after hours in the stuffy diner. The dumpster sat 15 feet away, lit by a single flickering streetlight that barely pushed back the darkness. She was halfway to the dumpster when she heard voices.
"Low. Urgent."
Coming from the far end of the alley, where it opened onto the parking lot of the abandoned textile factory next door. Jenna froze. Something in those voices made the hair on her neck stand up. She should turn around. Go back inside. Mind her business. But curiosity pulled her forward. Just a peek. Just to make sure it wasn't kids getting into trouble. She crept closer, staying in the shadows near the dumpster. 3 men stood beneath the broken factory streetlight. One of them held a black duffel bag. Even from 20 feet away, Jenna could see it bulging with something heavy. The man unzipped it partway, and the others leaned in to look. She couldn't see what was inside, but the way they moved, quick and nervous, told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't right. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't legal. Turn around. Go back inside. Forget you saw anything. Jenna took a careful step backward. Her foot caught on something, a loose piece of cardboard, and she stumbled. The trash bag slipped from her grip and hit the ground with a dull thud. All 3 men spun toward the sound. "Who's there?" one of them barked. Jenna's heart stopped. She pressed herself against the dumpster, praying the shadows would hide her. Maybe they hadn't seen her. Maybe they'd think it was a cat or the wind. I saw something move, another voice said. Footsteps. Coming closer. Panic flooded through her. She looked around wildly. The back door was 30 feet away. She'd never make it. Her keys. She needed her keys to get back inside. Her hand fumbled in her apron pocket, shaking, and the keys slipped through her fingers. They hit the pavement with a metallic clink that echoed through the alley like a gunshot. There. The shout came from right behind the dumpster. Someone's back there. Jenna didn't think. She ran. Her shoes slapped against the pavement as she sprinted for the back door. Behind her, she heard heavy footsteps, cursing, someone yelling at her to stop. Her hand found the door handle.
Locked. No. No, no, no.
She'd locked it behind her. She always locked it. That was the rule. Never leave the back door open during a shift. The footsteps were getting closer. She pounded on the door. Charlie, Charlie, open up. A hand grabbed her shoulder. Jenna screamed and twisted away, stumbling forward. She caught herself against the wall and kept running, this time toward the front of the building. If she could just get around the corner, get to the main entrance where there were lights and people. She burst into the parking lot and nearly collided with one of the bikers. The bearded man from the corner booth caught her by the shoulders, steadying her. His eyes locked onto hers, then shifted to something behind her. His expression hardened. Inside, he said quietly.
Now.
Jenna didn't argue. She ran for the front door as the sound of motorcycle engines suddenly roared to life. The bearded man turned to face the alley just as the three men appeared around the corner. They stopped when they saw the bikers. All 6 of them now, standing in a loose line between the thugs and the diner entrance. The parking lot lights cast long shadows across the pavement. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the rumble of idling motorcycles. Jenna pressed herself against the diner's front window, her breath fogging the glass. She watched as one of the thugs, a tall man with a shaved head, locked eyes with her through the window. He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then he and his companions backed away slowly, disappearing into the darkness beyond the parking lot. The bearded biker walked to the front door and opened it. Jenna stumbled backward. You okay? He asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a card. My name's Mason. If anything happens, if you see those men again, or anything feels wrong, you call me first. Understand? Jenna took the card with trembling fingers. Who were they? Mason's jaw tightened. Nobody you want to know. But they saw your face. And, from the way that one looked at you, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. What do I do? Jenna whispered. Lock your doors. Keep your phone close. And call me if anything seems off. He paused at the door. How old's your kid? Jenna's blood went cold. How did you? The drawing on your apron pocket. Looks like a kid's artwork. Mason's expression softened slightly. I've got kids too. You watch yours close, okay? He left without another word. The motorcycles roared away into the night, and Jenna was alone with Charlie, who'd finally emerged from the kitchen looking confused. She looked down at the card in her hand, at the empty parking lot, at the alley where 3 strangers now knew her face. And she wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Jenna didn't sleep. She sat on the worn couch in her living room, lights on, curtains drawn, watching the front door like it might burst open at any moment. Mason's card lay on the coffee table in front of her, the phone number staring back at her in the lamplight. Every sound made her jump. The neighbor's dog barking at 3 a.m. A car door slamming at 4. The newspaper delivery truck at 5:30. By the time dawn broke through her window, her hands were still shaking. Tyler's alarm went off at 7. She heard him shuffle out of his bedroom, his small feet padding across the hallway. Mom, you're already up? He appeared in the doorway wearing his Batman pajamas, his brown hair sticking up at odd angles. Jenna forced a smile and stood, her back aching from hours on the couch. Couldn't sleep. How about pancakes? His face lit up. Chocolate chip. Is there any other kind? She moved through the familiar routine, cracking eggs and measuring flour, trying to pretend everything was normal. Tyler sat at the kitchen table working on his math homework, occasionally asking her to check his answers. This was her life. Simple.
Safe.
Predictable. Through the kitchen window, she could see their small apartment complex parking lot. The same cars as always. Mrs. Chen's blue sedan. The maintenance guy's white truck. Nothing unusual. Then she saw it. A black SUV with tinted windows, idling near the entrance to the complex. It hadn't been there 5 minutes ago when she'd started the pancakes. Jenna's spatula froze mid-flip. She stared at the vehicle, her pulse quickening. It could be anyone. Someone visiting. Someone lost. It didn't mean anything. The SUV didn't move. Mom, the pancake's burning. She snapped back to attention and flipped it quickly, smoke rising from the edges. Sorry, buddy. Got distracted. Tyler wrinkled his nose. Can I have a different one? Sure thing. She plated the burnt pancake for herself and poured a fresh one, but her eyes kept drifting to the window. The SUV was still there, just sitting, waiting. After breakfast, she walked Tyler to the bus stop like always. The morning was crisp, leaves crunching under their feet. Other parents gathered with their kids, everyone half awake and clutching coffee mugs. Normal. Everything was normal. Except the black SUV that had moved to the street corner, still idling. Jenna pulled Tyler closer. Stay next to me, okay? Mom, you're being weird, but he didn't pull away. The bus arrived. Tyler climbed aboard with the other kids, turning to wave at her through the window. She waved back, her smile plastered on until the bus disappeared around the corner. The SUV pulled away 30 seconds later. Jenna's legs felt weak. She walked back to her apartment, forcing herself not to run. Inside, she locked the door, the deadbolt, and the chain. Then she stood in the kitchen, staring at her phone. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe the SUV had nothing to do with last night. Maybe. Something white caught her eye near the door. A piece of paper. She hadn't noticed it when she came in. Jenna walked over slowly. An envelope lay on the floor, partially under the door, like someone had slid it through the gap at the bottom. Her name was written on the front in block letters. No address. No stamp. Her hands trembled as she picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper with 6 words written in the same block letters. Keep quiet, or else your boy pays. The paper slipped from her fingers. She backed away from it like it was poisonous, her breathing coming in short gasps. They knew where she lived. They knew about Tyler. They'd been here, at her door, while she was making pancakes. She grabbed her phone and called the only number she could think of. Not Mason. Not yet. The police. That's what normal people did. You went to the police. The police station was a squat brick building downtown. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and everything smelled like stale coffee and old paperwork. Jenna approached the front desk where an officer sat typing on a computer, his expression bored. I need to report a threat, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The officer looked up slowly. What kind of threat? She placed the note on the counter. Someone left this at my apartment. They threatened my son. He picked it up, barely glancing at it. Any idea who sent it? There were these men last night. At the diner where I work. I saw them doing something in the alley and they saw me and now. What were they doing? I don't know exactly. They had a bag. They looked suspicious. The officer set the note down. Ma'am, without more specific information, there's not much we can do. Could be kids playing a prank. Could be someone who has a grudge. You got any enemies? No, they threatened my son. I understand you're upset, but we can't investigate every threatening note that comes in. Most of them are just talk. He slid the note back across the counter. Keep your doors locked. If you see anyone suspicious hanging around, call 911. We'll send a patrol car by. That's it. Jenna stared at him in disbelief. Someone threatened my child and you're telling me to call if I see something suspicious. That's how it works, ma'am. We need evidence. Specific threats. Right now, all you have is a note that could have been written by anyone. Jenna snatched the note off the counter, her hands shaking with anger now instead of fear.
Fine.
Thank you for nothing. She walked out of the station and stood on the steps, the morning sun too bright in her eyes. The police weren't going to help. She was on her own.
No.
Not completely alone. She pulled Mason's card from her pocket and dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. Mason, they left a note at my apartment, she said, her voice breaking. They threaten my son. The police won't help. I don't know what to do. There was a pause. Then, where are you right now? Outside the police station on Maple Street. Stay there. I'm 10 minutes away. The line went dead. Jenna sat down on the steps and waited, watching every car that passed, wondering which one might be coming for her next. Mason's motorcycle rumbled into the police station parking lot 9 minutes later. He pulled off his helmet and walked over, his boots heavy on the concrete steps. Up close, in daylight, Jenna could see the lines around his eyes, the gray threaded through his beard. He looked like someone who'd seen things he wished he could forget. Show me the note, he said without preamble. She handed it to him. He read it once, then again, his jaw tightening. When did you find this? This morning, after I took Tyler to the bus stop. Someone slid it under my door while I was making breakfast, her voice cracked. There was a black SUV watching my apartment. It followed the bus when Tyler left. Mason pulled out his phone and took a picture of the note. You did the right thing coming here first. Even if they didn't help, he glanced toward the police station with something like disgust. Local cops are stretched thin. And if they don't know what they're dealing with, they won't take it seriously. But you do? Know what we're dealing with. He was quiet for a moment. Get on. We need to talk, but not here. On that, Jenna looked at the motorcycle. Unless you want to have this conversation on the police station steps where anyone can hear us. She hesitated, then climbed on behind him. Mason handed her a spare helmet and waited until she'd fastened it before starting the engine. The motorcycle roared to life beneath her, and suddenly they were moving, wind whipping past as they left downtown behind. They rode for 15 minutes, past the highway and into an industrial area Jenna barely recognized. Mason pulled into the parking lot of what looked like an abandoned auto garage. The sign above the bay doors read Sentinel Auto Works, but half the letters were missing. This is your clubhouse? Jenna asked as she dismounted. Home base. Mason opened a side door and led her inside. The interior was nothing like she expected. Yes, there were motorcycles in various states of repair, tools hanging on pegboards, and the smell of motor oil. But there was also a large conference table covered in papers, a wall of filing cabinets, and several computers set up in one corner. It looked less like a biker clubhouse and more like a command center. 2 other bikers were inside. One was working on a laptop, the other organizing files. They both looked up when Mason entered. Jenna, this is Torres and Beck. They're part of the Sentinels. Mason gestured toward the conference table. Sit. We need to explain some things. Jenna sat slowly, feeling out of place in her worn jeans and diner uniform. What is this place? Really? Mason pulled a folder from one of the filing cabinets and set it on the table in front of her. Inside were photographs. The same 3 men from the alley. Different locations, different dates, but unmistakably them. We're not just a riding club, Mason said. Most of us are veterans. Military, police, investigators, intelligence. When we got out, we found that law enforcement was overwhelmed, understaffed, and buried in red tape. So we formed the Sentinels. We help with cases that fall through the cracks. Cold cases. Smuggling operations. Things the local cops don't have resources for. Torres spoke up from his laptop. We've been tracking this crew for 8 months. They're running a smuggling operation through the old textile factory. Pharmaceuticals mostly. Maybe weapons. We haven't been able to get close enough to confirm. Jenna stared at the photos. The shaved-head man from the alley looked back at her from a surveillance shot. Why haven't you arrested them? Because we're not cops, Beck said flatly. We gather intel and pass it to law enforcement. But without hard evidence, without a witness who can place them at a crime scene, there's nothing to prosecute. The realization hit Jenna like cold water. That's why you're helping me. I'm not just someone they threatened. I'm your witness. Mason nodded slowly. You saw them last night with that duffel bag.
You can identify them.
That's more than we've had in 8 months of surveillance. But I didn't see what was in the bag. I don't know what they were doing. Doesn't matter. You saw an exchange. You can place them at that location at a specific time. Combined with our surveillance, it's enough to get a warrant. Enough to start building a real case. Jenna's stomach twisted. And that's why they threatened Tyler. Because if I testify, their operation falls apart. Yes. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the concrete floor. Then I can't help you. I won't risk my son's life. If you don't help us, Tora said quietly, they'll assume you already talked. The threat doesn't go away just because you stay silent. They saw your face. They know you work at that diner. They know where you live, he paused. They'll tie up loose ends eventually. That's what people like them do. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jenna felt trapped, like walls were closing in from every direction. So, what am I supposed to do? I go to the police, and they don't care. I come to you, and you want to use me as bait. Where does that leave Tyler? Mason stood and walked around the table to face her. His voice was firm, but not unkind. It leaves him with a mother who has people watching her back. We can protect you.
Both of you.
But we need your cooperation.
How?
How can you possibly protect us from people like that? We have resources. Contacts in law enforcement who actually care.
Safe houses, if it comes to that.
And surveillance equipment that's better than what the local PD has. He pulled a small phone from his pocket. This is a burner. Untraceable. My number's programmed in. You keep this with you at all times. Anything feels wrong, you call immediately. Jenna took the phone, its weight unfamiliar in her hand. This is insane. A week ago, my biggest problem was paying for Tyler's birthday present. I know. And I'm sorry you got pulled into this. But you're in it now, whether you want to be or not. Mason's expression softened slightly. I meant what I said last night. I have kids too. A daughter, 15. A son, 12. If someone threatened them, I'd burn the world down to keep them safe. That's what we're offering you. A way to fight back. Jenna looked around the garage at the maps on the walls, the surveillance photos, the serious faces of men who'd chosen to keep fighting even after their wars had ended. They were offering her something the police hadn't. Hope. Maybe even safety. What do you need me to do? She asked quietly. Mason almost smiled. First, we get you and Tyler somewhere secure. Then we start building our case. The plan seemed simple when Mason explained it. Jenna would work her evening shift at the diner like normal. Act natural. Meanwhile, the Sentinels would stake out the location, watching for any signs of the crew. They needed to establish patterns, identify vehicles, gather evidence. You're the bait, Beck had said bluntly before she left the garage. But bait with a hook attached. Now, standing behind the counter at the Rusty Spoon as the dinner rush died down, Jenna felt more like prey than a fisherman. Every customer who walked through the door made her pulse spike. Every car that pulled into the parking lot caught her attention. The burner phone sat heavy in her apron pocket. Charlie noticed her jumpiness. You okay tonight? You've been on edge since you clocked in. Just tired, she lied, refilling salt shakers with mechanical precision. Through the front window, she could see Mason's motorcycle parked across the street at the gas station. He was inside, pretending to browse the snack aisle while keeping the diner in his line of sight. Torres was somewhere behind the building in a van, and Beck was positioned near the textile factory with a camera. They were watching. She wasn't alone. The thought should have comforted her more than it did. At 8 p.m., a silver Honda pulled into the parking lot. 2 men got out. Not the ones from the alley, but something about them set off alarm bells in Jenna's head. They were too alert, too watchful. One of them glanced toward the alley before entering the diner. They sat at the counter, right in front of her. "Coffee?" Jenna asked, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart.
"2 cups.
"And whatever's hot from the kitchen," the closer one said. He had a thin scar running down his left cheek and eyes that lingered on her name tag a second too long. "You're Jenna?" Her blood went cold. "That's what the tag says." "You work here every night." "Most nights."
"Why?"
The man shrugged. "Just making conversation. Small town. Everyone knows everyone, right?" Something like that. She poured their coffee with hands that wanted to shake and forced herself not to run to the kitchen. Instead, she walked calmly to the order window. Charlie, 2 specials. Through the window, she could see Mason entering the diner. He took a booth with a clear view of the counter and pulled out his phone, apparently absorbed in the screen. But Jenna saw his eyes flick toward the 2 men every few seconds. The burner phone buzzed in her pocket. A text, "Stay calm. We're recording everything." She pulled out the phone just enough to read the message, then slipped it back. The 2 men ate their meal in relative silence, occasionally murmuring to each other. Jenna tried to listen without being obvious, catching only fragments. "Tomorrow night, shipment arrives, make sure." When they finished, the scarred man left a $20 bill on the counter. "Way too much for 2 coffees and dinner. Keep the change. You take care now, Jenna." It sounded like a warning. They left. Jenna exhaled slowly and grabbed her phone. Within seconds, Mason was at the counter. "That was them," she whispered. "Not the ones from the alley, but they're connected. I know it. I got photos. Torres is tracking their vehicle." Mason's voice was calm, steady. "You did good. Just keep working." But Jenna's hands wouldn't stop trembling. She dropped a coffee mug, and it shattered across the floor in a spray of ceramic shards. "I can't do this," she breathed. "Mason, I can't." "Yes, you can." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "You're stronger than you think. And you're not alone." At 10 p.m., Jenna's shift ended. Mason insisted on following her home on his motorcycle, staying 3 car lengths back, but always visible in her rearview mirror. When she pulled into her apartment complex, he circled the block twice before parking. "All clear," he said when she got out of her car. "But I'm posting someone here overnight. Torres will be in the van across the street." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Jenna looked up at her apartment window where she could see Tyler's night light glowing. Mrs. Chun from next door was watching him, like she did whenever Jenna worked late. Everything looked normal. Peaceful. "They mentioned a shipment," Jenna said suddenly. "Tomorrow night. I heard them talking." Mason's expression sharpened. "You sure?" "Not the details. But they said shipment arrives and tomorrow night in the same sentence." He pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. "That's good intel. If we can catch them in the act with a shipment, that's everything we need." "What do you want me to do?" "Tomorrow? Nothing. Stay home with Tyler. Let us handle the surveillance." He paused. "Unless they contact you again. And if they do, you call me immediately. Don't engage. Don't try to handle it yourself." Jenna nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the shift was draining away, leaving only fear and fatigue. She went upstairs and relieved Mrs. Chun with profuse thanks and an extra $20 she couldn't really afford. Tyler was asleep in his bed, one arm wrapped around his stuffed dinosaur. She stood in his doorway for a long moment, watching the steady rise and fall of his breathing. What was she doing? Getting involved with bikers and criminals and surveillance operations? She was a waitress. A single mother. She made pancakes and served coffee and tried to save enough for school supplies. But Torres had been right. These people knew her face. They knew where she lived. Staying quiet wouldn't make them forget about her. It would just make her an easier target. The burner phone buzzed. Another text from Mason. "Get some sleep. We've got you covered." Jenna changed into her pajamas and lay down on her bed, but sleep felt impossible. Through her window, she could see the van Torres was sitting in, just barely visible in the shadows. Watching. Protecting. She'd made her choice. Now she just had to survive it. Tomorrow night, something was happening at the textile factory. The sentinels would be there. And somehow, without quite knowing how it happened, Jenna's testimony had become the linchpin of taking down an entire smuggling operation. Her phone buzzed again. Not the burner this time, but her regular cell. An unknown number. Her stomach clenched as she opened the message. "We know what you're planning. Back off, or Tyler pays the price. This is your last warning." Attached was a photo. Tyler at the bus stop that morning. Someone had been following him, photographing him. Jenna's scream brought Torres running. Torres burst through the apartment door, gun drawn. Mason was right behind him, having sprinted from his position down the block. Jenna sat on her bed, trembling, holding out her phone like it was a live snake. Mason took it, his face darkening as he read the message and saw the photo. When did this come in? Just now. 30 seconds ago. Jenna's voice was barely a whisper. They were watching him. This morning. They know everything. "Pack a bag," Mason said firmly. "You and Tyler. Enough for a few days. You're not staying here." "Where?" "Safe house. 30 minutes outside town." "It's secure." He was already on his phone, calling Beck. "We're moving them tonight."
Yeah, now.
Jenna moved on autopilot, pulling a duffel bag from her closet and stuffing it with clothes for Tyler and herself. Toothbrushes. Tyler's homework. His stuffed dinosaur. Her hands shook so badly, she could barely zip the bag. Torres gently woke Tyler, who blinked sleepily, confused.
"Mom?"
"What's happening?" "We're going on a little trip, baby. Just for a few days." "Right now?" "It's nighttime." "I know. It's an adventure." Her voice cracked on the last word. 20 minutes later, they were in Mason's truck, Tyler buckled in the back seat with his dinosaur clutched to his chest. Torres followed in the van. Beck led the way on his motorcycle. They took a winding route through back roads, Mason constantly checking his mirrors. The safe house turned out to be a small cabin nestled in the woods, owned by one of the sentinels. It had 2 bedrooms, a working kitchen, and bars on the windows. Not a prison. A fortress. "You'll be safe here," Mason said as he did a sweep of the rooms. "Torres will stay with you. I'm heading back to coordinate the surveillance for tomorrow night's shipment." "Tomorrow night," Jenna repeated numbly. "That's what this is all about, isn't it? They know you're planning to intercept the shipment. Looks that way. Which means we have a leak." Mason's jaw tightened. "Someone's been talking. Or they're just smart," Torres said from the doorway. "We've been watching them for 8 months. Maybe they've been watching us too." The thought sent ice through Jenna's veins. Mason knelt down to Tyler's level. "Hey, buddy. I know this is scary. But Torres here is going to make sure nothing bad happens. He's one of the good guys." Tyler looked at Torres with wide eyes. "Are you a soldier?" "I was. Marines. Now I help people like your mom." "Is my mom in trouble?" Torres glanced at Jenna, then back at Tyler. "Your mom is very brave. And we're making sure she stays safe." After Mason left, Jenna tucked Tyler into bed in the smaller bedroom. He was asleep within minutes, exhausted by the strangeness of the night. She envied him that escape. In the living room, Torres was setting up a laptop and communication equipment.
"Try to get some rest.
Tomorrow's going to be intense." "How can I rest?" "They're out there. They know where Tyler goes to school." "They know." Her voice broke. "They knew," Torres corrected. Past tense. "Right now, they don't know where you are. And tomorrow night, when they're focused on their shipment, we're going to end this." "You sound very confident." "I am." Mason's coordinated with a detective who actually cares. Not the locals who brushed you off, but someone from the state police. Tomorrow night, they'll have a warrant. Real cops, real backup. This isn't just us anymore. Jenna sank onto the couch. What if something goes wrong? Then we adapt. That's what we do. Torres pulled up surveillance feeds on his laptop, multiple camera angles of the textile factory and surrounding area. "See this? We've had eyes on that building for weeks. We know their patterns. When they move, who they meet. Tomorrow night, they think they're making a routine pickup. Instead, they're walking into a cage. And the leak? If someone told them about your surveillance, then they'll be expecting us at the factory. Which is why Mason's setting up a secondary position. We'll have people they don't know about, in places they won't expect. He looked at her seriously. You did your part, Jenna. You gave us the intel we needed. Now, let us do ours. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Jenna tried to keep Tyler occupied with card games and movies on the cabin's old TV, but her mind was miles away, at the textile factory where Mason and the others were setting their trap. The burner phone stayed silent until 4 p.m. Then in position. Operation starts at 10 p.m. Stay put. At 9:30, Torres received a call. He stepped outside to take it, and when he came back in, his expression was grim. What? Jenna asked immediately. Change of plans. The shipment's arriving at a different location. Not the factory, an old warehouse by the docks. How do you know? We've been monitoring their communications. They switched locations an hour ago. Mason thinks they're testing us, seeing if we have their phones tapped. Do you? Torres smiled thinly. Not legally, but we have other ways. Jenna watched through the window as Torres coordinated via text with the team. The sun had set, and darkness pressed against the cabin windows like a living thing. Somewhere out there, Mason and the others were repositioning, racing against time. At 10:15, Torres's phone rang. He answered, listened, then his face went pale. Say that again. Jenna stood up. What is it? Torres held up a hand, listening intently. Understood. We're secure here. He hung up and immediately started checking the locks on the doors and windows. Torres, what's happening? The warehouse was a decoy. The real shipment is still at the factory. He pulled his gun from its holster and checked the magazine. And 3 men just left the dock heading in this direction. They're looking for you. Jenna's blood turned to ice. How would they know? The leak. It's worse than we thought. Torres moved to the window, peering through the curtains. Mason's sending backup, but they're 20 minutes away. We need to secure this location now. Tyler. Stay with him. Lock the bedroom door. If anyone gets past me, you take him out the window. There's a trail through the woods that leads to a neighbor's house half a mile north.
Can you do that?
Jenna nodded, her throat too tight for words. She ran to the bedroom and locked the door behind her. Tyler was still asleep, his small face peaceful in the dim light. She went to the window and quietly unlocked it, checking the drop. Maybe 6 feet. Manageable if she had to. From the living room came the sound of Torres moving furniture, barricading the door. Then silence. Waiting. Jenna sat on the bed next to Tyler, one hand on his shoulder, the other clutching the burner phone. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. Minutes passed like hours. Then she heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel. A car door slamming. Voices outside, low, cautious. Torres's voice rang out. This is private property. Turn around and leave. A gunshot shattered the night. Jenna grabbed Tyler, who jerked awake with a cry. Mom, we have to go. Now, she pulled him to the window, threw it open, and pushed him through. He dropped to the ground with a yelp. She followed, landing hard on her ankle, but forcing herself to keep moving. More gunshots.
Shouting.
Torres was holding them off, but for how long? Run, she told Tyler. Into the trees. They ran. The woods were pitch black. Jenna's phone flashlight cut a thin beam through the darkness as she pulled Tyler behind her, branches whipping at their faces. Behind them, more gunshots echoed through the night, rapid, desperate. Mom, I'm scared, Tyler sobbed, stumbling over roots. I know, baby. Just keep moving. Keep going. Her ankle screamed with every step, but she didn't slow down. Half a mile. Torres said half a mile north to the neighbor's house. But which way was north? The panic made it hard to think, hard to breathe. The gunfire stopped. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. It meant either Torres had won or... Jenna couldn't let herself finish that thought. There, Tyler pointed. Through the trees, she could see a light. A porch light. The neighbor's house. They burst from the tree line into a small clearing. The house was old, paint peeling, but lights glowed in the windows. Jenna pounded on the door, gasping for breath.
Please.
Please, we need help. An elderly man opened the door, his face creased with confusion and concern. What in the? Call 911. Men with guns. The cabin. Jenna couldn't get the words out fast enough. Please, my son. The man ushered them inside immediately. Martha, call the police.
Now.
His wife appeared from the kitchen, already on the phone. Jenna sank to the floor, pulling Tyler into her arms. He was shaking, crying into her shoulder. You're okay, she whispered, over and over. You're okay. We're safe now. But were they? Torres might be dead. The men might be coming through the woods right now. And Mason? Where was Mason? The burner phone rang. She fumbled for it with shaking hands. Jenna? Mason's voice was tight, controlled. Where are you? Neighbor's house. North of the cabin. Torres, there was shooting. Torres is alive. Took one in the shoulder, but he's conscious. Backup just arrived. Where exactly are you? She put the elderly man on the phone. He gave the address while Jenna held Tyler, rocking him gently. Martha brought them blankets and hot tea neither of them could drink. 10 minutes later, headlights flooded the driveway. Mason's truck screeched to a halt, followed by 2 police cruisers. Mason burst through the door, his eyes finding Jenna immediately. You hurt. She shook her head. Tyler. Mason crouched down. Hey, buddy. You did great. Your mom did great. Tyler looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. The bad men are being dealt with. I promise. Mason's voice was gentle, but his eyes were steel. He looked at Jenna. We got 2 of them at the cabin. The 3rd ran. State police have roadblocks up. He won't get far. How did they find us? Jenna's voice was hollow. Mason's jaw clenched. That's what we need to figure out. But right now, we're moving you again. Somewhere they definitely don't know about. An hour later, they were at the state police barracks in a secure conference room. Tyler slept on a couch in the corner, finally exhausted into unconsciousness. A female detective named Reeves sat across from Jenna, her expression sympathetic but professional. I know you've been through hell tonight, Reeves said. But we need your statement. Everything you saw, everything that happened. Jenna talked. She told them about the alley, the duffel bag, the men at the diner, the threatening note, the photo of Tyler, the attack on the cabin. Her voice was mechanical, detached, like she was describing something that happened to someone else. Reeves took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Jenna finished, the detective leaned back. The 2 men we arrested at the cabin are talking, trying to cut deals. They confirmed the textile factory operation, and they gave up the location of tonight's actual shipment. She glanced at Mason. Your team's surveillance helped us get a warrant. Officers are moving on the warehouse now. What about the leak? Mason asked. Reeves's expression hardened. That's being handled internally. Someone had access to information they shouldn't have. We'll find them. A uniformed officer knocked and entered, handing Reeves a phone. She listened, her face unreadable. Then she smiled, the first real smile Jenna had seen all night. They got them. All of them. The warehouse, the shipment, the ringleader. Everything. She looked at Jenna. It's over. The words didn't feel real. Jenna stared at her, waiting for the catch, the other shoe to drop. The men who threatened you are in custody, Reeves continued. The ones who attacked the cabin are charged with attempted murder. The organization is dismantled. You're safe. Safe. When had she last felt safe? Mason put a hand on her shoulder. You did it. Your testimony, your cooperation. You helped take down an operation that's been running for 2 years. The shipment tonight? Illegal pharmaceuticals worth $3 million. Without you, they'd still be out there. Jenna looked at Tyler sleeping on the couch, his small chest rising and falling peacefully. She'd almost lost him tonight. Almost lost everything. But she'd fought back. She'd run into the darkness and come out the other side. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now you go home, Reeves said. We'll need you to testify eventually, but the evidence is solid. Your part is done. And the leak. Reeves exchanged a glance with Mason.
Let us worry about that.
You've done enough. Dawn was breaking when Mason drove Jenna and Tyler back to their apartment. A police car sat in the parking lot, protection detail until the trials were over. Jenna carried Tyler upstairs, his arms wrapped around her neck, still sleeping. Inside, everything looked exactly as they'd left it. Normal, unchanged, like the last 48 hours had been a nightmare. But they hadn't been. The fear had been real. The danger had been real. And so had the people who'd stood beside her. Mason lingered at the door. Torres is going to be fine. Surgery went well. He'll be back on his bike in a few weeks. Thank him for me. For what he did. Thank him yourself. The Sentinels don't forget their friends. He handed her a card, different from the burner phone, permanent. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything. Jenna took it, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I don't know how to thank you. You already did. You were brave when it mattered most. He tipped his head. Get some rest. You've earned it. When he left, Jenna locked the door, deadbolt, chain, everything. She checked on Tyler one more time, then collapsed onto her own bed. It was over. Really over. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in days, let herself believe it. 3 weeks later, Jenna stood outside the county courthouse, smoothing down her borrowed blazer. It was the nicest thing she owned now, lent by Detective Reeves for today's testimony. Through the courthouse doors, she could see reporters gathered in the lobby. The case had made headlines. Diner waitress helps dismantle major drug ring. She hated the attention, but she'd promised to see this through. Mason appeared at her elbow, dressed in a button-down shirt instead of his usual leather vest. She barely recognized him. You ready? No, she admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than she'd imagined. The defendants sat at a long table with their lawyers, the shaved-head man who'd smiled at her through the diner window, the scarred man from the counter, and 3 others she recognized from surveillance photos. None of them looked at her when she entered. The testimony took 2 hours. Jenna recounted everything. The alley, the duffel bag, the threatening note, the photo of Tyler. Her voice shook at first, but as she spoke, strength returned. These men had terrorized her, had threatened her son, and now she was the one with the power. When the prosecutor finished, the defense attorney stood. He was older, silver-haired, expensive-looking. Ms. Hayes, isn't it true that you never actually saw what was in the duffel bag that night? No, I didn't. And you can't definitively say what those men were doing in the alley, can you? I know what I saw looked illegal. And I was right. A few people in the gallery chuckled. The judge gavelled for silence. The attorney tried a few more questions, but Jenna didn't waver. When she was dismissed, she walked past the defendant's table with her head high. The shaved-head man finally looked at her then. His smile was gone. Outside, Tyler was waiting with Mrs. Chen, who'd agreed to bring him for the afternoon. He ran to her immediately. Did you tell them, Mom? Did you tell them about the bad men? I did, baby. Are they going to jail?
Yes.
For a very long time. Detective Reeves emerged from the courthouse, looking satisfied. That was excellent testimony. The defense is already talking plea deals. You sealed it. What about the leak?
Jenna asked.
Did you find out who told them about the safe house? Reeves's expression darkened. We did. A dispatcher at the local station. He'd been on their payroll for 6 months. He's been arrested, she paused. I'm sorry we didn't catch it sooner. You and your son could have been. But we weren't, Jenna interrupted. We're okay. And they were. Therapy helped, both for her and Tyler. The nightmares were fading. Tyler had stopped checking under his bed every night. Jenna had stopped jumping at every car door slam. 2 days after the trial, Jenna walked into her new job. Not the rusty spoon. She'd quit the day after the courthouse testimony. Instead, she was starting at Morning Brew Cafe, a bright, cheerful place near Tyler's school. Better hours, better tips, closer to home. The owner, a kind woman named Sarah, showed her around. "You came highly recommended," Sarah said. Detective Reeves called personally. Jenna smiled. Small kindnesses. That's what got you through. That evening, she picked Tyler up from school, and they walked home together. He chattered about his day, about the science project he was working on, about the soccer team he wanted to join. Normal 9-year-old things. Beautiful, boring, normal things. As they approached their apartment, Jenna heard the familiar rumble. 6 motorcycles pulled into the parking lot, Mason leading the road sentinels. They parked and dismounted, and Torres limped over, his arm still in a sling. "Heard you got a new job," Mason said. "Thought we'd celebrate." They'd brought pizza, 3 large boxes, and crowded into her small apartment like it was the most natural thing in the world. Beck taught Tyler a complicated handshake. Torres showed him photos of his motorcycle. Mason helped Jenna set out plates and napkins. "You didn't have to do this," Jenna said quietly to Mason. "Yes, we did. You're family now. That's how it works."
Family.
The words settled around her like a warm blanket. After dinner, Tyler asked Torres about being a Marine, his eyes wide with fascination. The bikers told stories, funny ones, carefully edited for young ears, and Tyler laughed until his sides hurt. When they finally left, Mason was the last to go. At the door, he turned back. "The bike fund," he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "From all of us." Jenna opened it. Inside was $500 in cash. "We can't. Tyler's birthday is next week, right? Every kid deserves a real bike." Mason's smile was genuine. "Besides, you helped us close a case we'd been chasing for months. Consider it a consulting fee." Tears blurred her vision. "Thank you. For everything. Thank you for trusting us." He paused at the threshold. "You know where to find us if you need anything. And, Jenna, you were stronger than you thought you were. Don't forget that." After he left, Jenna stood at her window watching the motorcycles disappear down the street, their taillights fading into the dusk. Tyler came up beside her, slipping his small hand into hers. "Are they really coming back?" he asked. "Yeah, baby. I think they are." The next Saturday, they went to the bike shop. Tyler picked out a blue mountain bike with silver stripes, his face glowing with joy. The owner threw in a helmet. "On the house," he said with a wink that suggested Mason had already called ahead. That afternoon, Jenna taught Tyler to ride in the parking lot of their complex. He wobbled, fell twice, got back up. By sunset, he was riding in circles, shouting, "Look, Mom.
Look."
I'm doing it." She watched him, her heart full. 3 weeks ago, she'd been running through dark woods, terrified and desperate. Now she was here, watching her son fly. The sound of a motorcycle made her turn. Mason sat at the parking lot entrance on his bike, watching. He raised a hand in greeting. She waved back. He'd been right that first night. She'd witnessed something she shouldn't have, and it had changed everything. But not just in ways she'd feared. She'd found courage she didn't know she had. She'd found people who stood beside her when it mattered. She'd found her own strength. Tyler circled back to her, breathless and beaming. "Can we come back tomorrow?" "Every day if you want," Jenna said, ruffling his hair. The motorcycles rumbled past, the road sentinels on their evening ride. Mason led them, Beck and Torres flanking him, 3 others behind. They weren't just passing through. They were checking in, keeping watch, protecting their family. Jenna smiled and waved. They waved back, and then they were gone, disappearing around the corner. She looked up at the sky, pink and orange with the setting sun, and breathed deeply. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid.